Hey there, neighbors and fellow South Baltimoreans. I'm Nate Carper, joined by Kevin Lynch. And on today's episode, we are super excited to introduce our special guest, Zach Blanchard, the newly elected city councilman for Baltimore's 11th district. Zach's got a background in economic development and a mission to make our neighborhoods safer and more vibrant. He's bringing some fresh vibes to the city council. So we'll be diving into Zach's recent election victory, his plans for big issues in our district, and his vision for South Baltimore. Whether you've been here forever or just moved in, this is an episode you won't want to miss. Thanks for tuning in. Zach, welcome to the podcast. How you doing, man?
Thanks, Nate. Kevin.
Yeah, of course. So, Zach, you eked out a win in the primary election for District 11 Councilman, winning by a slim margin of 48 votes. That's got to be one of the tightest elections. In your opinion, what made the difference? What do you think got you this victory?
Yeah, eked out is the right word, Kevin. I had a great group of volunteers motivated to get out and knock doors, talk to people. Myself, I knocked about 7,000 doors. Volunteers knocked about 15,000 doors. Being able to say that I'm never taking more than $150 from anybody. I'm a Marine veteran. I'm a high school football coach. I'm a dad, neighborhood associate president. All these things gave people a sense of someone who's in it for the right reasons, who has a heart for service. And I think that bringing a message of we need to invest in all of our neighborhoods, Baltimore as a city is stronger when all our neighborhoods are stronger. And so many of the most entrenched problems we have to be addressed that way. I think it resonated with a lot of people. It didn't resonate with everybody. And I'm looking forward to, to help win it over those votes for next time. So
Were you surprised you won? Did you have good feeling, or were you pleasantly surprised?
there was like an 8-day gap between the election and when it was certified. And so it was that 8-day period of kind of just refreshing the election results on my phone. And I had a couple of reporters ask, are you surprised by this? I guess I was the only person who thought I was going to win. I felt really confident. And a lot of other people I thought felt confident. But when I won, or even when it was close, everyone was like, dude, I can't believe it's this close. And I was like, wait, I thought we were thinking I was going to win. To get into a bit of campaign nerdiness, the break rate, you ask after you knock on a door, you have a conversation, you say, can I count your vote in the election? How people respond, you rank on your app from 1 definitely going to vote for me to 5 definitely not going to vote for me. So the break rate is in the likely votes for you. The rule of thumb is your break rate will translate into your election day vote total. And we had a 53% break rate the last 2 weeks and won 53% of the votes on election day. It was perfectly precise. It was super weird. But so it was about obviously a little early on, the early voters and whatnot. Maybe we hadn't been able to get the message out to everyone as thoroughly, but it was kind of where we expected it to be.
8 days to find out if you have a new job or not. How was that time? Were you basically getting much sleep? How did that play out in your house?
I think what was nice for me and maybe wasn't clear to folks was that I knew when the election results were going to come out. We knew nothing was going to happen on Wednesday. The first announcement of results on Thursday was going to be like later in the afternoon, right? So, and then we knew they weren't going to do anything on Friday, and they weren't going to do anything on the weekend, and then something on Monday. I would get antsy on Thursday afternoon, but I knew we weren't getting any results in that interim period. So, if you were really interested in the race and weren't following my email distro, because I would send that info out, but if you weren't in the email distro, you were just kind of like, literally, a lot of folks have been like, man, I was just refreshing my phone for a week, and it's so like humbling that many people cared that much about the race.
So I invite everybody to listen to our first podcast with Zach. We'll put that link in the show notes where we went deep into his background. Zach, for this podcast, can you give a quick summary of your professional background and how that led to you running for District 11 Councilman?
Yeah. I don't know if my professional background led to me running, but I came up to Maryland as a midshipman at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis. I'm from South Louisiana originally. I met my wife, who's from Montgomery County, when I was a midshipman. She moved to Baltimore after college. I went off to do Marine stuff for about 5 years. Then I got stationed back at the Naval Academy as a American government instructor and as a training and recruiting midshipmen to go Marines. So that was from 20 to 23. So in that time period, I was just really involved. I got involved with the neighborhood association. I was like, hey, there's a gap in my block doesn't have a block captain. They were like, you want to run the program? And I was like, actually, sure. And just getting involved in the neighborhood association, as you guys know, I'm a very active parishioner at Catholic Community South Baltimore, coach football at Digital Harbor High School. So was involved in the neighborhood in multiple ways. In that process, I came across several things that I felt really, really strongly disagreed with my soon-to-be predecessor on, and was looking for someone to support, and no one was running. And it was kind of sometimes you got to be the change you want to see. I didn't have a ton of experience. I never thought about running for office before early 23. Being involved in a lot of stuff put me in opportunities to see things I disagreed with, and kind of what are you going to do about it? They did briefly allude to economic development. I got out of the Marine Corps about 1.5 years ago. I'm the vice president of economic development for a management authority like Waterfront Downtown Partnership for people who are familiar. I'm just north of downtown called the Midtown Benefits District. And I think that is like kind of like being a neighborhood association president, but you do it for work and you get paid doing it. So plenty of opportunities to work with the different city agencies, businesses, and neighborhood associations. So I think that has been really good preparation, especially north of downtown in the district. Socially, I was more involved kind of on the peninsula.
What are some issues you're passionate about and you want to get to work right away on as a councilman?
Thanks for asking. Number one, we have 14,000 abandoned properties in the city. 14,014,000. And that's boarded up doors and windows, roof collapsing in the back. We have over 500 abandoned properties in the 11th district. When you live in a neighborhood, let's say a young person growing up in a neighborhood that has a vacancy crisis, there's nothing that says there's no future where you live, not to mention the fire risk, public safety problems. It ruins how people think of their own neighborhood. It's a cancer. It also costs the city $200 million a year. So we literally can't afford this crisis. This was a study that Hopkins did about 2 years ago to do the analysis on it. It is very clearly. So solving this crisis is a financial opportunity. The city council just passed a vacancy tax that's going to the mayor for signature, passed unanimously. I'm pretty sure the mayor's in support of this specific legislation. It doesn't address vacant lots. Not sure if the rate is the precisely right amount, but for the most part, I think it's a great start. Councilman Costello, who co-sponsored the legislation, as well as, the rest of the council for making that happen. So that's really great. Beyond vacant housing crisis, plenty of things I can talk about. Two, I think kind of specific maybe to the peninsula. One, I have so much admiration for what we've seen at, all of our primary schools are thriving, and then prep and FSK specifically are thriving with 50% of the kids are coming from economically disadvantaged families. So whether you are coming from a more affluent family in the neighborhood or whether you're coming from a less affluent family, maybe in the neighborhood, maybe not, those two schools are doing great, and that's incredible. We don't have that at Digital Harbor High School, where I coach football. I believe 80% of the students at Digital are economically disadvantaged. 95% are racial minorities. Helping create an environment where kids who grew up in the neighborhoods on the peninsula, it becomes more natural for them to matriculate into Digital Harbor High School in 5-10 years is, I think, it's like the holy grail type thing that when it's really going to become a neighborhood school, which is going to be great for the neighborhood, great for our sense of place. It's going to benefit the kids who are all the kids who are at the school, because it's going to help the neighborhood. It's going to make it so much easier for the neighborhoods to support and be involved in the schools. I just think this is incredibly important. I'm very excited about it. Not going to lie, a little biased because I've coached football there, but it's the second largest high school in the city. So, it will have a really meaningful impact across the city.
Sure. And I know you have ideas to make the athletic field at Digital Harbor better, possibly bigger. Could you dive into that for us?
Digital Harbor is the largest high school in the state of Maryland that doesn't have its own sports field. And I think that reflects poorly on us as a community and city schools either. We have 1,500 something kids at school. And it's what we have right now. We used to have a 120-yard field. So 100 yards plus end zones, not quite enough with the space on the back end, but the northern part was gravelled over during some construction several years back. And so just working, and then also community garden was put there. This is Zach speaking. This is not city schools or anybody speaking. This is just what I would like to see there. Getting the gravel lot turned into grass and finding parking. We're working with the parking authority on some solutions that I think are going to be really good. Turning that gravel into grass is the first and the major thing. The second thing that I personally would like to see the community garden moved over to probably on Cross Street, where it's a large space of grass. Would need a good amount of investment. It's not an easy process. We would need irrigation, nice fencing, all these things, but I think it's absolutely worth it. It would be better for the community garden because the community would see it. It's in where it is now. It would obviously be better for athletics because we would then have almost the full-size space for the field. At that point, you're getting close to an actual regulation field. The next step, figured out on the back end, are still being hashed out. I've seen a couple different options. Which one's most feasible, most cost-effective is something that, hopefully 3 or 4 years down the road, we can be having that conversation. Besides that, Kevin, I love talking about sports fields and youth sports on the peninsula. We have the field at Riverside Park coming online. That's going to be great. Stola Gibbs Park and Chapelendal is supposed to be, I believe, having their multi-use field coming in 2025. This could be a really good time as the number of young families on the peninsula is growing and demand for rec sports on the peninsula is growing. I'm excited to support those efforts.
I always tell people Digital Harbor reserves athletic facilities, but I always say this area is dealing with two challenges. A lot of areas aren't, where you have a high school doesn't have their own facilities, so they're using the same facilities that all the rec leagues and the same fields that the middle schools are trying to use. And then also we have this burgeoning adult social league stuff, which wants to use the fields as well. So it's really just so much competition for the limited fields that we have. So certainly any additional field space to the area will help that out. And
It's a victim of our own success with the amount of young families growing. What we've seen with South Baltimore Little League, Maryland Youth Soccer Association, on the young adult side with Volo Sports, kind of is the best example of it. There's very high demand for recreation fields on the peninsula right now. And that's, a product of good things, but it's a problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah, for sure. And then hopefully by spring, Riverside Parks Field will be open for permanent events, and then the Rash Field construction, which is supposed to start any day now. There's going to be some space for small soccer fields there. Hopefully a few of those things will open up more opportunities for the many people looking for field space around here. What do you anticipate day-to-day life is going to be like as a councilman?
And one important thing I don't know if a lot of people realize, you have you plus your 3 full-time staff members. So it's a team of 4, right, that you're leading, including yourself. And there's like 3, I think, key things that you have to do. One is city council members are legislators, which means we legislate. You pass laws to make the city better. And the art of figuring out of lining up all the different circles of the Venn diagram of the council members, the mayor, and the agency heads, and all these different groups to line up something that makes sense is a very important challenge. And so passing good laws is an extremely important part of transforming a city that has massive issues, right? And looking at how our budget is allocated, which the council has a lot of influence over, looking at how our tax system works, all these sorts of things, they are of major importance. And that's one of the 3. The second of the 3, maybe people are more familiar with this, is constituent services. When you have everything from hey, a car hit my street light and now the street light's broken over and that's not safe. Or, we were just robbed, or our car was stolen and we're having some challenge getting the police report number, or trying to get a permit for a block party, right? The whole realm of stuff, supporting that and supporting people who either trying to just live their lives in the city or people trying to do good stuff, in their neighborhoods is something that constituent services second leg. And then lastly, just going out and being the face in public, walking around the neighborhoods, going to the association meetings, festivals, holiday parties. People know who you are. People feel like they can reach out to you if they need you. People know how to get a hold of you. So those are the 3 main things that I think of: legislative, constituent services, and being out in public. A balance of those 3. Time-wise, I don't know how much of each, but a lot of all of them.
You are a vocal supporter of the Inner Harbor redevelopment and ballot question F that MCB Real Estate said was needed to move the project forward. That passed in the general election. Talk about why you are supportive of that ballot measure and why you are excited about the redevelopment of the Inner Harbor.
I was vocally in support of question F, and then I organized volunteers and door knocked myself against question H, which was the effort to cut the council size in half. And so I'll talk about question F. I'd also like to talk about question H, which I've been a lot more involved with over the last couple months. So I do public space in my day job. I live 5 blocks from the harbor. I'm never taking money from anybody above $150 and never from a developer. And I think that getting rid of Light Street Spur and pulling the harbor into McKeldin Plaza, getting 3.2 more acres of great public space, and pulling the Inner Harbor into downtown is a valuable thing. I think the Stale building is awesome. I think that their plans for the smaller retail circles in the middle is really cool. I am, honestly, I'm probably as mixed as most people on the 2 high rises. It's worth noting that they're extremely thin. They're not like downtown city buildings. They're not going to add some magical thing to the Inner Harbor, but they're not going to really take away much either. And if I had to choose between when you get the renovation of Pratt Street, the renovation of Light Street, the Inner Harbor is trapped by an ocean of moving cars. When my options are A, the status quo, or B, these 2 really tall but super thin towers, you're going to give me several more acres of public space. $200 million or the $400 million of public money, that's going for the promenade. That structurally have to happen. That's not like if MTV didn't do anything, someone would have to put those $200 million to saving the Inner Harbor Promenade. So that's a very important, there's very real sincere opposition to it. I always tell people we can agree to disagree with this. And, I want people to know that you can trust that I'm supporting this because I actually believe it's going to be better for the harbor, for downtown, for the city. And B, I want you to know that I'm willing to bet that 2 years after this thing is complete, most of the people, just like back when the original Harbor Place redevelopment happened, when the pavilions were put in, most people are going to say, you know what, this actually is better than what we had. So, I know that's an extremely provocative question. I had a couple folks say, hey, I don't think you should have made that advertisement for them when they asked. But I'm a big believer that people need to know where I stand as a representative in a democracy. And so I have never minced words on that. Since literally my first campaign event, I was asked that question. I gave an answer that was, I was still kind of forming it, but I was already leaning in support of it. Since then, I've been blunt about this.
Getting rid of that bypass, that's going to take a lot of studies, planning, and funding. How do you think they go about getting that done? How much time do you think it'll take to get some progress on that front?
You're saying on getting the public funding?
No, the plan calls for to eliminate that, Light Street cut through bypass.
Oh, they've already done the traffic study. It'd be great to share it on the link to the podcast where people want to see it. It's basically what happens is downtown is a gridded system. So when you remove one portion of the gridded system, everyone's going to just take all the other options, right? Right now, someone in Mount Washington going to Columbia is going to drive the fastest way is to drive down 83, then go onto Pratt Street, then to Light. You're going through downtown instead of just going west like you should be on 695. Traffic is a market, but instead of money, you're paying typically in time. And so if it increases 2 minutes, then people are going to change their decision on how they do this stuff, right? So, and it's a gridded system. So the traffic study was done by a nationally renowned firm. This wasn't some like back of the napkin thing done by someone at MCB. That's not true. And there's also some adjustments being made to like some lanes and different traffic patterns downtown to expedite the process. So I'm happy to talk to folks about it, but you can also just get it straight from the source with the traffic study.
I've seen a concern about people from South Baltimore getting over to Fells Point and Canton or getting to 83. How do you think that commute will be impacted with the spur no longer there?
It's a change to how people make their decisions, right? Some people that will still be the fastest route and that'll be a little slower. Some people will go up Charles Street. Some will go MLK, some through the tunnel. Some people, right? Like Federal Hill to Fells Point is going to go basically that same route. You just have a couple less lanes to do it. But it's like 8% of the time through downtown. It's actually kind of a pessimistic amount because it assumes that no one's going to change their behavior. So if you're going 7 minutes through downtown, it's a very small amount of time. It's hard to believe, but experts have done the analysis. There's no like better way to estimate it.
And how soon do you think we'll start to see changes at the Inner Harbor?
I have no idea. I know they've got to get the money lined up. I've asked NCB for a meeting. Just because I supported the charter amendment doesn't mean I'm rubber stamping every aspect of this process. I don't think anyone's expecting me to do that. I'm planning on having a meeting with the folks at MCB about this probably early in December. We'll get a better sense of what they're looking at. But with Republicans taking over the presidency, the House, and the Senate, there's some questions. It's not like President Biden was going to give $400 million to the city of Baltimore. That's not how this stuff works. The way that federal funding works is going to change. And it's unclear how that would impact this project. And, it's a good chance that it would slow the line down.
So I've been living in this community for over 20 years, writing about it for 13 years. Really wanted to bring up the issue of crime, specifically in Federal Hill. Like 10, 15 years ago, homicides, shootings in Federal Hill were incredibly rare. I know this because I've written about it. We used to keep tallies of it. And now there just seems to be this increase in, very, violent acts taking place in Federal Hill. We've had 2 murders plus a additional shooting that happened in Federal Hill in the last couple months. So obviously it's concerning to a lot of people. Do you have any ideas or plans of how we can address this and kind of get things more under control in Federal Hill?
So violent crime in the neighborhood, according to the police department, data-wise, violent crime was at an all-time high in 2023. It was about double what it was in 2014. So this is not just like some backlash perception thing. This is very directly, like the data supports your sense of the increase in violent crime. And I said this in the last time I was on the podcast. I was a victim of an armed robbery myself in the middle of the day, right outside my house, back in 2023. 2022 was an all-time high in Federal Hill. 2023 was even higher. We're down about 30% year over year. It's still a very, very high amount compared to the national average, but it certainly calls for optimism. And I think that there's, different things that have probably been successful. The South Baltimore Camera Network, which I can't put up on enough. They're doing really wonderful stuff. That's both home, regular residents just volunteering their email address and their camera. Hey, if something happens in your house, we're going to email you and ask if you've got footage. That has helped with at least 5 or 6, like, solving violent crimes in like Federal Hill proper that I know of in like the past 6 months. And I'm sure there's more that I'm just not aware of. That's huge. We've got some grant funding to put multi-camera systems on like corner properties. The Outpost restaurant has been a great partner in that regard. So now that intersection has these camera systems. So that's incredibly important. You also have the investments we're making in basically what I like to call safe streets for schools at Digital Harbor, second largest high school in the city, has a lot of safety challenges. Those always impact the young people in the school first and foremost, but they impact the neighborhood as well. And so, if we want Digital Harbor to thrive, it's got to be safe. And so the investments that Principal Jackson has been making there with the movement team, we need to see the city and I believe city schools make some more investments in that program and programs like that is incredibly important in our neighborhood because we have the second largest high school in the city. You have the challenges with the bar district. I'm really looking forward to collaborating with bar owners closely on that. And then you have the challenges with just kind of the being on the south side of the Inner Harbor, Federal Hill Park, Key Highway area. So there's several different key challenges, but we are starting to move in the right direction. And I'm really excited for this challenge. Having been the president of the Federal Neighborhood Association for about a year and a half, and haven't been really involved in the association before that, I've got a lot of thoughts and some experience on this. And it's just such an important issue. Locust Point has, by city standards, very, very low violent crime. Federal Hill has twice the average rate of the city as a whole. They're completely different neighborhoods. And if we want to see families staying and raising kids in Federal Hill like we're blessed to have down in Locust Point, we have to get better at that specifically.
You brought up Digital Harbor. I know Digital Harbor had their first football playoff win in school history this year. Tell us how the season went.
Yeah. So I coach at Digital, assistant coach, offensive line and special teams. We won, as you mentioned, the first playoff win since it's been Digital Harbor, which I think about 20 years. So that's it. That's huge. We just got knocked out of the playoffs. We had a new head coach come in and a brand new coaching staff. So there was a lot of changes and kind of learning. Some players left for other schools. Some new players come in kind of tied with the changes in the coaching and whatnot. So it was a bit of a transition period, but definitely calls for optimism. And just a side note, like, Digital Harbor won boys indoor and outdoor track championships last year. We have a band as of last year. We have a girls flag football team that just started this year. Girls soccer. I mean, like, there's a lot of momentum in great new athletic director, a lot of momentum with the extracurricular programs at that school. And I'm such a big believer that giving young people something to be excited about and something to make people proud of them about is just a very obvious win for everybody. And so that's something that I look forward to supporting as a councilman.
Anything else you'd want to tell our listeners before you take office?
Whew, how many more hours do we have in this podcast? No, just kidding. To hit on a couple major things. So opioid overdoses. We are the highest per capita city in the country for overdose deaths. But we have the really incredible opportunity with all the settlement money, hundreds of millions of dollars coming in over the next 15 years that we'll be spending over the next 15 years. That's an area that I think we're going to make a lot of great improvements in because of this funding coming in. And the opioid crisis, it's overdoses, but it's also homelessness. It's also mental health. It's all these, it's open air drug market, like all these negative things tie in together and hurt all of our communities. So and several of them, this district is very diverse. So, this podcast is about the peninsula, but there's a lot more to even the 11th district than just the peninsula. But that's a major one. I'm really looking forward to supporting the main streets in the city. I have sat on the board of Federal Main Street for several years. I'm a major believer that having a vibrant, nice, pleasant commercial corridor just makes people who live in a neighborhood feel good about the neighborhood and feel that sense of place. And people who don't live in the neighborhood feel similarly positively about it. And vice versa, when you have the opposite sort of commercial corridor, it has the opposite effect. And so getting Main Street right is incredibly important. Sat on the board at Federal Main Street Economic Development, my day job. So I got a lot of thoughts on that. Very excited to be involved there. And just in general, as you guys know, I'm very big in we need to break car dependence, right? So we need to be looking at how can we make it easier to ride a bus or a bike or scooter, or, how can we invest and get the harbor connector, the water taxi, 7 days a week. right? Like these types of things are things that I'm already involved with and asking about. I think there's a lot of great opportunities because people want walkable neighborhoods and people want neighborhoods where they don't need a car. And a lot of our residents, a third of the residents in the city, don't even have the option to have a car. Right. And so these are incredibly important things that from just like a quality of life perspective and from an equity perspective, we need to get right. A lot of other stuff I can ramble on about, but I think I've covered a lot of the big points.
We'll start tagging you on Facebook really soon.
Yeah. Oh boy. Looking forward to it.
Zach, really appreciate you jumping on again. I know you'll be working hard out there, so we appreciate that. It would be nice if we could, as our city councilman, if you wanted to jump on a couple times a year and, just kind of share updates with our community would be awesome.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking really hard about how to best get the message out across a lot of different formats and different venues. I love that Councilwoman Ramos has her 90-second, videos that she puts out every week. Having something like that, because just communicating what we have going on and what we're working on so people know what we have going on, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, they're out there, we're putting in the work, getting on podcasts and all this stuff. This is not going to change once I take off, and I'm looking forward to the next round.
Thanks, Zach. We appreciate you jumping on.
Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, as always, guys, appreciate you.